Jessica Starling pressed her fingers against the edge of the conference table, feeling the cool glass beneath her palms as she steadied herself for what was coming. She had learned to brace for impact whenever Dominic Hale entered a room. The air itself seemed to shift, growing heavier with expectation and dread. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling, windows of Sterling Global Investments, casting long shadows across the sleek Manhattan office. Jessica had arrived 2 hours early to perfect her quarterly analysis presentation, checking every figure 3 times, anticipating every possible question. Yet she knew it would never be enough. Not for him. The elevator chimed and the familiar sound of expensive Italian leather shoes echoed across the marble floor. Dominic Hale strode into the conference room with the confidence of a man who had built an empire from nothing and crushed anyone who stood in his way. At 38, he was devastatingly handsome in the way that dangerous things often are. Sharp jawline, piercing blue eyes that missed nothing, and a presence that commanded attention without effort. Jessica straightened in her chair, refusing to show weakness even as her heart rate quickened. Around the table, her colleagues shifted uncomfortably, grateful they were not the target today. "Ms. Starling." Dominic's voice was smooth as silk and just as cold. "I assume you have something worth my time this morning." "Yes, sir. The analysis of our emerging market portfolio shows significant opportunities in the technology sector." Jessica activated the presentation, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. She had barely reached the 3rd slide when Dominic interrupted. "Interesting. You have managed to compile data that any competent intern could have gathered in half the time." The words landed like a slap. Jessica felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she kept her expression neutral. "The depth of research goes beyond surface-level metrics. If you'll allow me to continue, the projections indicate substantial growth potential." Dominic leaned back in his chair, studying her with those calculating eyes. Projections based on what? Optimism. Hope. He turned to address the room. This is the problem with analysts today. They confuse wishful thinking with strategic planning. Jessica bit the inside of her cheek hard enough to taste copper. This was not about the analysis. It never was. For the 2 years she had worked at Sterling Global, Dominic had singled her out with criticism that felt personal, targeted, relentless. While he was demanding with everyone, with her there was an edge, an intensity that she could not understand. "The projections are based on 15-year historical data, current market trends, and consultation with 3 independent expert sources," Jessica replied, keeping her voice professional. "All documentation is in the appendix." For a moment, something flickered in Dominic's eyes. Was it surprise? Respect? But it vanished so quickly, she thought she might have imagined it. He waved his hand dismissively. "Proceed." The rest of the presentation passed in tense silence. When Jessica finished, Dominic stood without a word and walked out, leaving her colleagues to offer sympathetic glances and whispered words of encouragement. "He is absolutely impossible," muttered Rachel Martinez, the senior portfolio manager, once the door closed. "I do not know how you put up with it, Jess." Jessica gathered her materials, hands trembling slightly now that the adrenaline was fading. "I need this job, Rachel. My mother's medical bills are not going to pay themselves." It was the truth that kept her anchored. Her mother's battle with multiple sclerosis required expensive treatments, and her younger brother was in his final year at Columbia. Jessica was the lifeline her family depended on, which meant enduring Dominic Hale's inexplicable hostility was simply part of the price she had to pay. That afternoon, Jessica was organizing files at her desk when her canvas tote bag slipped from the chair, spilling its contents across the floor. Pens, lip balm, her phone, and a cream-colored envelope scattered at her feet. She was reaching for the envelope when a hand beat her to it. Jessica looked up to find Dominic standing over her, holding the elegant invitation between his fingers. Her breath caught. What was he doing at her desk? He never came to the analyst's floor. "What is this?" His voice was quiet, but there was something dangerous lurking beneath the surface. "It is personal," Jessica said, standing and extending her hand. "May I have it back, please?" Dominic ignored her outstretched hand, his eyes scanning the envelope. His jaw tightened. "Christopher Blake," said the name like a curse. "You know Christopher Blake?" Jessica felt a flash of defiance. "I grew up with Christopher. We have been friends since childhood." Not that it is any of your concern. Something dark passed over Dominic's face. Before Jessica could stop him, he slid his finger under the envelope's seal and extracted the card inside. His eyes moved across the elegant script. She watched his expression shift from curiosity to something that looked unsettlingly like fury. A private dinner at Oriole, Dominic read aloud. How charming. Christopher always did have expensive taste. You know Christopher? Jessica asked. Surprised. Everyone in finance knows Christopher Blake. Trust fund baby playing entrepreneur. Dominic's voice dripped with contempt. Is this really the caliber of man you spend your time with? Jessica felt her temper flare. That is completely inappropriate. My personal life has nothing to do with you or this company, doesn't it? Dominic stepped closer, and Jessica found herself backed against her desk. He was close enough that she could smell his cologne. Something expensive and woodsy that made her head swim. You represent Sterling Global, Miss Starling. Your associations reflect on this firm. That is ridiculous, and you know it. Jessica snatched the invitation from his hand. Christopher is a respected businessman and a good person, which is more than I can say for some people. The words hung in the air between them. For a moment, Jessica thought she had gone too far. But instead of exploding, Dominic went very still. When he spoke, his voice was low and controlled. Are you planning to accept his invitation? That is none of your business, answer the question. Jessica lifted her chin. Yes, I am. Something flickered in Dominic's eyes, something raw and unguarded. For just a second, the impenetrable mask slipped, and Jessica saw something that stunned her. Pain. Genuine. Unmistakable pain. Then it was gone, replaced by his usual cold composure. How disappointing. I expected better judgment from you, Miss Starling. He turned and walked away, leaving Jessica staring after him, her heart pounding for reasons she did not want to examine. Behind her, she heard Rachel's low whistle. What on earth was that about? Jessica sank into her chair, clutching the invitation. I have no idea, but that was not entirely true. Something had shifted in that moment. Something she had been deliberately ignoring for 2 years. The way Dominic looked at her was not just criticism. It was something far more complicated. Something that terrified her because she recognized the reflection of it in herself. She smoothed out the invitation. Reading Christopher's kind words again, dinner would be pleasant, comfortable, safe. Christopher had always been those things. He had asked her out a dozen times over the years, and she had always found excuses. But now, with Dominic's inexplicable reaction still burning in her mind, she found herself reaching for her phone. She typed out a message to Christopher. I would love to have dinner with you. Saturday works perfectly. As she hit send, Jessica told herself she was doing this for all the right reasons. To have a nice evening with an old friend. To remind herself that there was kindness in the world. To prove that Dominic Hale had no power over her choices. But deep down, in a place she refused to acknowledge, she knew the truth. She wanted to see what Dominic would do next. She wanted to crack that infuriating facade and see what lay beneath. And that wanting was the most dangerous thing of all. The days following Jessica's acceptance of Christopher's invitation felt like walking through a minefield. Dominic's behavior shifted in ways that left her constantly off balance. He no longer hurled public criticisms at her during meetings. Instead, he found reasons to keep her close, assigning her to projects that required his direct oversight, calling her into his office for consultations that seemed to stretch longer than necessary. On Wednesday afternoon, Jessica found herself summoned to the executive floor for the 3rd time that week. Dominic's assistant Patricia gave her a sympathetic look as she gestured toward the massive oak door. He has been in a mood all week, Patricia whispered. Good luck. Jessica knocked twice and entered. Dominic's office was a testament to minimalist luxury. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park, the autumn leaves blazing orange and gold. His desk was obsidian black, uncluttered except for a single laptop and a crystal tumbler of what looked like scotch despite the early hour. You wanted to see me? Jessica asked, remaining near the door. Dominic looked up from his laptop, and for a moment, she saw exhaustion in his eyes. The Brennan merger. I need you to lead the due diligence team. Jessica blinked in surprise. That is a senior-level assignment. Rachel usually handles those. Rachel is not you. Dominic closed his laptop and stood, moving to the windows. You have a mind for details that others miss. I need that on this deal." It was the closest thing to a compliment he had ever given her. Jessica should have felt triumphant, but instead, she felt suspicious. Why now? Why this sudden change? Dominic was silent for a long moment, his back to her as he stared out at the city. "Maybe I have been unfair to you, Miss Starling. Maybe it is time I acknowledged your actual value to this company." Jessica moved closer, drawn by the vulnerability in his voice. "What is really going on, Mr. Hale?" He turned to face her, and the intensity in his blue eyes made her breath catch. "Have dinner with me instead." The request hung in the air between them, shocking in its directness. "Excuse me? Cancel your plans with Christopher Blake. Have dinner with me instead." Dominic took a step toward her. "Let me show you that I am not just the man who tears you apart in conference rooms." Jessica felt her heart racing. "I cannot do that. I already committed to Christopher, and frankly, I have no idea why you even care who I have dinner with, do you not?" Dominic moved closer, and Jessica found herself backing toward the desk. "Are you really that blind, Jessica?" It was the first time he had used her first name. The sound of it in his deep voice sent shivers down her spine. "This is completely inappropriate," she managed to say, though her voice came out breathless. "You are my boss. I am aware of that fact every single day." Dominic stopped just inches from her. "Do you think I enjoy this? Do you think I wanted to spend 2 years fighting against something I knew was impossible? Fighting against what? You." The word came out raw, honest. "From the moment you walked into your interview, so confident and brilliant and completely unaware of how extraordinary you are, I knew you were dangerous. I knew you would become the one thing I could not control." Jessica stared at him, her mind reeling. "So you decided to make my life miserable instead? That was your solution?" "It was the only way I knew to keep distance between us." Dominic ran a hand through his dark hair, disrupting its perfect styling. "My father taught me that emotions are weaknesses, that caring about someone gives them power to destroy you. I watched him lose everything when my mother left. He became a shell of himself, and I swore I would never let anyone have that kind of hold on me." The confession struck something deep in Jessica's chest. She saw him clearly now, not as the untouchable billionaire, but as a man who had built walls so high he had trapped himself inside them. "That is no excuse for how you treated me," she said quietly. "You made me doubt myself. You made me feel small, I know." Dominic's voice was thick with regret. "And I will spend however long it takes making that right if you give me the chance. But please, Jessica, do not go to dinner with Christopher Blake." Jessica felt torn. Part of her wanted to give in, to see if there was something real beneath this sudden vulnerability. But another part remembered every humiliating moment, every public criticism, every time she had gone home and cried from frustration. "I need time to think," she finally said. "This is too much, too fast." Dominic nodded slowly, stepping back. "I understand, but know this. I am not giving up. Not anymore." Saturday arrived with unseasonable warmth. Jessica chose a midnight blue dress that made her feel confident and beautiful. She told herself she was dressing for Christopher, but she knew the truth. Some part of her wondered if Dominic would try to stop her. She met Christopher at Oriel, a restaurant known for its elegant ambience and impeccable wine cellar. Christopher stood when she arrived, his warm brown eyes lighting up with genuine pleasure. "Jessica, you look absolutely stunning." He pulled out her chair with practiced courtesy. "Thank you. You look wonderful too." And he did. Christopher was handsome in an approachable way. With sandy hair and an easy smile that had charmed countless people throughout his life, they ordered wine and fell into comfortable conversation, reminiscing about their childhood in Connecticut, laughing over shared memories of summer camps and school dances. Christopher had always been kind to her, steady and reliable. There were no games, no hidden meanings behind his words. "I have wanted to do this for years," Christopher admitted over the main course. "You have always been special to me, Jess. I think you know that." Jessica smiled, but it felt hollow. "Christopher, you are wonderful, truly. But I need to be honest with you. There is someone else." It was not a question. Jessica nodded slowly. "It is complicated. I am not even sure if it is real, or if I am just caught up in something that will hurt me. But my heart is not fully here, and you deserve someone whose heart is entirely present." Christopher reached across the table and squeezed her hand. I appreciate your honesty. And whoever this complicated man is, I hope he realizes how lucky he is. They finished dinner as friends. The pressure of romance lifted. Christopher insisted on walking her to her car, ever the gentleman. As they stepped out of the restaurant, Jessica froze. Dominic was standing across the street, leaning against a black Mercedes, his hands in his pockets. He looked like something out of a dream in a charcoal suit, his dark hair slightly tousled by the evening breeze. Their eyes met across the distance, and Jessica felt her pulse skyrocket. That is him, is it not? Christopher said quietly. Yes. He looks like he is ready to commit murder, Christopher chuckled. Go on, go talk to him. I will be fine. Jessica hugged Christopher goodbye and crossed the street, her heels clicking on the pavement. Dominic watched her approach with an expression she could not quite read. What are you doing here? She asked, making sure you got home safely. His voice was rough. How was dinner? It was lovely. Christopher is a good man. Something painful flashed in Dominic's eyes. Are you planning to see him again? Jessica stepped closer, looking up at him. No, I am not. Because as infuriating as this is, as much as you have hurt me, I cannot stop thinking about you. I cannot stop wondering what might happen if I give this a chance. Dominic's expression transformed. Hope, raw and unguarded, filled his face.
Jessica?
But, she held up a hand, I need you to understand something. If we do this, I will not be your secret. I will not be someone you hide or someone you treat differently at work than you do in private. And you will have to prove to me that you can be the man you are right now, not the man who spent 2 years tearing me down. I will prove it. Dominic reached for her hand, his touch gentle. Every single day, I will prove it to you. Jessica looked at their joined hands, feeling the warmth of his palm against hers. I must be crazy. If you are, then we are both crazy. Dominic pulled her closer until there was barely any space between them. Can I kiss you? Jessica's answer was to rise on her toes and close the distance herself. The kiss was nothing like she had imagined during all those secret moments when she had wondered what it would be like. It was better. Dominic kissed her like she was precious, like she was the answer to a question he had been asking his entire life. His hands cupped her face gently, his thumbs stroking her cheek as he deepened the kiss. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Dominic rested his forehead against hers. Come home with me. Not for anything other than talking. I want to tell you everything. I want you to know all the parts of me I have never shown anyone. Jessica nodded, unable to form words. She had crossed a line tonight, and there was no going back. Whatever happened next would change everything. The following weeks felt like living in two different worlds. At the office, Dominic maintained professional boundaries, though Jessica caught him watching her with soft eyes when he thought no one was looking. Outside of work, they spent every possible moment together. He took her to quiet restaurants where they could talk for hours, to art galleries where he revealed a passion for abstract expressionism, to his penthouse where they sat on his balcony overlooking the city and shared secrets until dawn. Jessica learned about the father who had taught him that love was weakness, about the mother who had abandoned him when he was 12, about the years he had spent building his empire as armor against ever being vulnerable again. She told him about her mother's illness, about the pressure of being her family's anchor, about dreams she had set aside to be responsible. You do not have to carry it all alone anymore, Dominic had said one night. His arms wrapped around her as they watched the sunrise. Let me help. Let me be part of your life, not just the difficult parts, but all of it. But their growing connection had not gone unnoticed. Rachel had cornered Jessica in the break room with a knowing smile. So you and Dominic knew something was different. He actually smiled in yesterday's meeting, like a real smile. It was terrifying. Jessica laughed, despite herself. It is new. It's complicated, but it is real. Good, you deserve happiness, Jess. And honestly, he seems human now. You have done what I thought was impossible. The real test came with the annual Sterling Global Charity Gala, an event that drew the most powerful players in finance. Jessica had attended before, but always as invisible support staff. This year, Dominic had asked her to be his date, making their relationship public in front of colleagues, clients, and competitors. Jessica chose a gown of emerald silk that hugged her curves before flowing to the floor. When Dominic picked her up, the look on his face made her feel like the most beautiful woman alive. You are going to stop every heart in that room, he murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. The gala was held at the plaza, the ballroom transformed into an elegant wonderland of crystal chandeliers and white roses. As they entered together, Dominic's hand on the small of her back, Jessica felt dozens of eyes turn their way. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "Let them talk," Dominic said quietly, guiding her through the room with confidence. "I am done hiding what you mean to me." But the evening took a turn when Christopher appeared, looking handsome in his tuxedo. He greeted them both warmly, though. Jessica noticed the way his smile tightened when he saw Dominic's possessive stance. "Jessica, you look radiant," Christopher said. "Dominic, taking good care of her, I hope." "Better than good." Dominic's voice held a warning edge. "I am glad to hear it, though I have to say, I was surprised by this development." "Jessica, are you certain this is what you want?" Dominic has a reputation for being rather cold-blooded in his relationships. Jessica felt Dominic tense beside her, but she placed a calming hand on his arm. "Christopher, I appreciate your concern, but I am exactly where I want to be." Christopher nodded slowly. "Then I wish you both the best." But as he walked away, Jessica caught the flash of something bitter in his expression. The moment of tension passed as Dominic led her to the dance floor. In his arms, with music swelling around them, Jessica felt the world narrow to just the two of them. "Thank you," Dominic said softly. "For what? For defending us? For choosing me, even when it would be easier to choose someone like Christopher, someone without my baggage." Jessica looked up at him, seeing past the powerful billionaire to the man who still feared being left. "You are worth choosing, Dominic. Every difficult, complicated, wonderful part of you." Something shifted in his expression, becoming determined. Suddenly he stopped dancing and turned to address the room. Someone cut the music, and hundreds of faces turned their way. "What are you doing?" Jessica whispered, panic fluttering in her chest. "Something I should have done weeks ago." "What?" Dominic raised his voice to address the crowd. "Most of you know me as someone who keeps his personal life private. But tonight, I want everyone here to know something important." Jessica felt her cheeks flush as every eye in the room fixed on them. "For 2 years, I worked with the most brilliant analyst in our industry, and I was too much of a coward to admit what she meant to me. I hid behind criticism and distance because I was afraid. But Jessica Starling saw through all of that. She challenged me, matched me, and somehow decided I was worth a second chance." Dominic turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "I am not perfect. I am going to make mistakes. But I love you, Jessica. I love your strength, your compassion, the way you never back down from a fight. You made me want to be better than I was, and I am going to spend the rest of my life proving that your faith in me was not misplaced." Jessica felt tears streaming down her face, but they were happy tears. Around them, the crowd erupted in applause, but she barely heard it. All she could see was Dominic, looking at her like she was his entire world. "I love you too," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "You impossible, infuriating, wonderful man, I love you." Dominic kissed her then, in front of everyone, with no hesitation or shame. It was a declaration and a promise, a new beginning written in front of witnesses. When they finally pulled apart, Rachel was crying happy tears nearby, and even some of the hardened executives were wiping their eyes. Christopher had slipped away, but Jessica hoped he would find his own happiness. Later that night, in Dominic's penthouse, they stood on the balcony overlooking the glittering city. Jessica was wrapped in his jacket, leaning back against his chest as his arms encircled her. "Are you ready for what comes next?" Dominic asked. "Office romances are complicated. There'll be people who say you only got ahead because of our relationship. Let them talk. I know my worth, and you know my worth. That is what matters." Jessica turned in his arms to face him. "Besides, I can always go work somewhere else if it becomes a problem. We're not the only company in Manhattan." Dominic laughed, a sound that was becoming more frequent. "Do not even joke about that. Sterling Global needs you. I need you. Then we will figure it out together." Jessica reached up to trace the line of his jaw. "No more hiding. No more walls. It's just us, building something real." "Something real," Dominic echoed, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I like the sound of that." As they stood together under the stars, Jessica thought about the journey that had brought them here. From humiliation to understanding, from anger to love, from two people fighting against connection to two people choosing to build a life together. It had not been easy, and it would not always be easy going forward. But standing in Dominic's arms, feeling completely seen and cherished, Jessica knew that she had made the right choice. Sometimes the love worth having was the love you had too. Fight for the love that challenged you to grow and change and become better than you were. And sometimes the person who hurt you most was the person who needed your love most desperately, if only they could learn to accept it. 3 months later, Rachel would catch them stealing a kiss in the supply closet and tease them mercilessly. 6 months later, Dominic would promote Jessica to partner, and no one would question whether she deserved it. A year later, he would propose on that same balcony where they had first opened their hearts completely. With the city lights twinkling like stars brought down to earth, but tonight, they simply held each other and whispered promises into the darkness. To people who had found their way through pain and pride to something extraordinary, a love, real and true, and worth every difficult moment it took to find it. The billionaire who had used cruelty as armor had learned to be gentle. The woman who had endured humiliation with grace had learned to demand the love she deserved. Together, they had created something neither could have built alone. Their story was not about a boss and employee falling in love. It was about two wounded people learning to trust, to be vulnerable, to believe that sometimes the person who sees your worst can also bring out your best. It was about choosing courage over fear, honesty over protection, and love over all the reasons why love might hurt. As dawn broke over Manhattan, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Jessica and Dominic remained on the balcony, unwilling to let the night end. The morrow would bring new challenges, new obstacles to navigate. But they would face them together, and that made all the difference. The end of their individual stories had become the beginning of something far more beautiful. A shared story written day by day with all the messy, complicated, wonderful reality that true love required. And Jessica Starling, who had once been humiliated by her billionaire boss, now stood beside him as an equal, a partner. And the woman who had taught him that the strongest thing a person could do was open their heart and let someone in. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like. Share this story with your friends and family, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.